Good, good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. Here are my disclosures. I will review the clinical data showing the association between axial symptoms in healthy older subjects and PD, which axial symptoms are associated with cognition and in which direction, what type of cognitive dysfunction is present, which insights we can learn from treatment interventions, and the mechanisms subserving this association. Plenty of cross-section and longitudinal studies in PD show the association of axial symptoms and cognition. The lack or poor response to levodopa of axial symptoms and cognitive impairment adds additional evidence for this association. Bulbar and gait-associated axial symptoms are per se a cluster. Normal aging also shows the association of axial symptoms and cognition. In healthy older subjects, dysphagia is present in 30% of those over 65. It increases with aging and frailty, and it even has a name, presbyphagia. Speech production also declines with aging and is called presbyphonia. It affects diverse acoustic properties, and fingers seem more protected. Age also affects gait, and this was the first population-based study to assess gait in those over 60. They found that age gave rise to a change in several gait variables, namely space and time variables. Slow speed had a greater influence on temporal variables. During normal aging, there is already a relationship between gait and cognition. This relationship seems to be in both directions. This recent Korean study showed that slow gait was associated with cognitive impairment, mostly in the subdomains of processing speed and executive dysfunction. On the other way round, cognitive impairment predicts falls, namely executive dysfunction double the risk of falls and increase the risk of serious injury. In those who already have mild cognitive impairment, there is an increase in risk of falls at 12 months, and the effect is stronger for non-amnestic MCI than amnestic MCI. This cluster of cognitive complaints and slow gait in older individuals without dementia or mobility disability has been recently operationalized under the name of notorious cognitive risk syndrome. This meta-analysis of over 3,000 adults aged over 60 found an incidence of 26% of MCR after 3 years of follow-up. Modifiable risk factors at baseline were sedentariness and obesity. So, normal aging is already characterized by an association of axial symptoms and cognition. Parkinson's disease, for which aging is the strongest risk factor, adds on the top of healthy aging. With a more severe dopamine depletion, presence of Lewy bodies, non-dopaminergic pathology, and the presence of aberrant firing. Several clinical data shows that during the natural history of Parkinson's disease, there is an association between the disability from axial symptoms and the disability from cognition. This retrospective study in a big sample of patients used the non-motor symptom questionnaire to assess dysphagia. It found that predictors at baseline for dysphagia were being male, age, longer disease duration, and the presence of dementia. A video fluoroscopic swallowing study in patients with a mean of 4 years of disease found that the oral phase correlated with worse scores in the Stroop test and verbal memory. The allocation of attentional resources may explain the link between dysphagia and cognition. This very nice study assessed dysphagia during a dual task and a video fluoroscopy. Patients performed the digit span while swallowing. Those with mild attention deficit worsened during the dual task, but those with a greater attentional deficit had a safer swallowing during the dual task, maybe because they were more alert to perform a safer swallowing. Anyway, there seems to be a top-down cortical control to brainstem central pattern generator. This article has been less well studied in relation to cognition. Nevertheless, the French COPARC cohort found that the bulbar symptoms of sialorrhea, dysphagia, and dysarthria correlate with each other. However, this recent very nice study sheds some light on the link between speech and cognition. They assess PD patients submitted to STN-DBS for a follow-up of 24 months. Patients who deteriorated speech during follow-up got better with the stimulation off, but at the baseline they already had a lower scores in Stroop color word test and digit span. Freezing seems not to occur in normal aging and be specific to disorders with Parkinsonism. As in healthy aging, gait and cognition are related in both ways. A very nice case control study assessed freezing of gait in dementia with Lewy bodies and Parkinson's disease, using a self-reported outcome for freezing. Patients with DLB and PD had a similar motor disability. At baseline, DLB patients had more frequent freezing than patients with Parkinson's disease, and this difference was maintained after 5 years of follow-up. So, freezing of gait in DLB was more frequent, more severe, and emerged earlier in disease course. These results called for the role of dementia and cholinergic deficit on freezing. A possible explanation is a dysfunctional hyperdirect pathway linking the pre-supplemental motor area and the STN. This study assessed freezing during on and off state using a virtual reality paradigm while the patients were doing a functional MRI. They found that during off, there was a reduced activity in bilateral PSMA and a slight reduction of activity in bilateral STN. Also, during off, there was a reduced connectivity between STN and PSMA within and between hemispheres, and it correlated with the footstep latency. During off, there was also a correlation between prolonged footstep latency and increased connectivity between both STNs, indicating the presence of pathological oscillations. The authors argue that the dopaminergic dependency on fog is mediated by hypoactivation in the PSMA and impaired functional connectivity between the PSMA and the STN through the hyperdirect pathway. Additionally, there is increased connectivity between STN bilaterally, underlying the frequency of prolonged footstep latency. On the other way round, this systematic review showed that the presence of postural instability and gait disorder predicts cognitive impairment in future, both for Parkinson's disease dementia and cognitive impairment associated with Parkinson's disease. This association is present even in early PD. This cohort of incident PD from Newcastle assessed 119 patients with a detailed neuropsychological evaluation during a follow-up of 36 months. At baseline, gait variables, but not cognition, predicted a decline in fluctuating attention and visual memory. Decline in fluctuating attention was predicted by slower pace, higher gait variability, and more unstable postural control, while decline in visual memory was predicted by slower pace. The authors argue that gait and cognition share several mechanisms. Gait is highly dependent on dopamine, but also is highly dependent on cholinergic transmission with the involvement of nucleobasalis of minor, and it has been documented the presence of amyloid pathology in those with cognitive dysfunction, On the other side, attention is dependent on cholinergic involvement, and nucleus basalis of minor is involved in visual memory. And also, it is well known the presence of amyloid pathology in cognitive dysfunction. The association between cognition and gait may also be studied using another designs. This cohort of incident PD from Norway found that over half of the patients develop one milestone after 7 years of follow-up. At baseline, higher age and mild cognitive impairment were the best predictors for the development of milestones. Hallucinations occurred 3.3 years after diagnosis, recurrent falls 3.8 years, dementia 4 years, and nursing home placement 5.4 years. And these milestones seem to occur as a cluster. Previously, a clinical pathological study had found that this cluster of milestones predated death in a very timely fashion, giving rise to the concept of a cluster of disability milestones predating death. We also may learn several data from therapeutics. We perform a levodopa challenge test in late-stage PD, in which over half of the patients are demented. Axial symptoms were non-responsive to levodopa, as usually is the case for cognition. However, this is not that simple. For example, there is freezing during off, which responds to levodopa, and freezing during on, resistant to levodopa. And even attention may fluctuate with levodopa. In this way, this pilot clinical trial assessed the efficacy of rivastigmine in gait and falls in patients that were not demented. Preliminary results show the tendency for better gait and fewer falls in those allocated to rivastigmine. The benefit of rivastigmine in gait may be related to the presence of cholinergic degeneration in those patients with gait dysfunction. In this study, patients were assessed with SPECT using a ligand for acetylcholine and another for dopamine. The results showed that slow speed correlated with the presence of cholinergic deficit and not with dopaminergic deficit. Another possible link between gait and cognition is the presence of beta amyloid pathology in those with more severe postural instability and gait disorder. The binding is mostly in the cingulate gyrus and temporal and frontal lobes. In conclusion, healthy aging is already associated with the presence of a correlation between axial symptoms and cognition. In PD, these share several mechanisms. They share cognitive processes such as attention and verbal memory. And the breakdown of these cognitive resources disrupts actual function and underlines the type of cognitive dysfunction present in PD. They also share cholinergic but also dopaminergic transmission. Cholinergic transmission arises from the PPN to the thalamus and to the nucleus basalis of minor. From here, it goes to the striatum and to cortical areas. So, actual signs and cognition share common brain regions. And lastly, they share abnormal amyloid protein deposition.